Hello bookworms! Today I'm here with my January reading wrap-up. January is the first month of the year and I have signed up for a whole bunch of reading challenges which I did a video on and I will leave linked down below, and I am very pleased to say that I am doing very well so far. I ended up reading a total of 10 books in January, so I'll just get started. The first book that I read this month is Meant to Be by Lauren Morrill. This is a really cute story about a girl who is in high school and her class is visiting London. She's like a very uptight girl, so she's just constantly like following the rules and all of that kind of stuff her whole life, but she ends up being paired up as a buddy with this guy who is a big troublemaker, and her London trip just goes completely like the opposite of the way that she was expecting it to go, and he really gets her to kind of like open up and experience new things and see that like there are other ways that things can be done and can be enjoyed. So I really liked it. I thought it was really cute. It was extremely predictable. There really was like no surprise at all in this book, but it was still enjoyable to read. So I ended up giving Meant to Be 3 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read is a short story, which I will insert the cover of over here, and it is Mitosis by Brandon Sanderson. It's the short story that comes between Steelheart and Firefight. I actually started reading Firefight, then got spoiled for Mitosis within the first 3 chapters, and I was like, you know what, I'll just read the short story now, even though I know it's gonna happen. I thought it was really cute. Like, it was a good way to get back into the world after having not been in it since last year. I thought that was pretty enjoyable. It's not something that you have to read. Like, it was just a fun addition, but it wasn't like necessary to the series. So I ended up giving Mitosis 4 out of 5 stars. And then next I read Firefight by Brandon Sanderson, which is the second book in the Reckoners trilogy. I don't want to give you really a synopsis of it because I don't want to spoil it for anyone that hasn't read the first one, but I really loved Firefight. I thought that it was an amazing follow-up to the first book. There is just like so much that happened in this, and I am just amazed at Brandon Sanderson's world building because he was able to build a society like completely different from what is in Steelheart, and it was just really enjoyable. He introduced a whole set of new characters and I just loved it like so much. So I ended up giving Firefight 4 out of 5 stars, and I'm really excited for Calamity, which comes out later in February. The next book that I read is Pivot Point by Casey West. I am obsessed with this book. It was like amazing. I always thought that this book was going to be like a cute contemporary love story, and while there are elements of that in it, it's also like a sci-fi novel because the main character has the ability to see the future. So within the first like chapter or so, her parents tell her that they are getting divorced, and she has the option of either going with her dad and leaving this compound of people with special abilities that she's lived in her whole life, or staying in that compound with her mom, her best friends, and everything that she is familiar with. So they tell her to take her time, and they tell her to search, because that's what they call her ability, is like searching the future, for about the next 6 weeks so that she could determine what timeline she'll be the most happy in. And oh my god, it was so good. Like, there was never a moment where I wanted to read one timeline versus another. Like, I was completely interested in every single timeline, and they switch by chapter. So like one timeline will be at her mom's, one timeline is at her dad's, and they would be happening simultaneously. So there are like parallels between both of them. And it's just like so enjoyable as you're reading. And I seriously stayed up so late reading this book. I usually will like fall asleep if I try to read for a really long time before bed, but I could not put this down because the end was so exciting. And I love it so much that I actually even upgraded it to a hardcover because I was like, this is a favorite book. I ended up giving Pivot Point 5 out of 5 stars, obviously. Next, I read Truth Witch by Susan Dennard, which is a book that I have been just waiting for like forever. I got a copy of BEA last year, and I have no idea why I waited so long to read it, although it worked out because we ended up reading it for the Spines with Wines book club this month. We just did our live show for this, so I will leave a link to that down below, but Truth Witch was like so incredible on so many levels. Susan created this amazing world, and I love all of the inspiration that it has taken from Avatar: The Last Airbender. I love all the different kinds of witches. I do think like the beginning is a little bit complicated to get through because there's no character that is just being introduced to this world as you are. You are like thrown into the middle of it, and things are kind of explained as you're going, but it can be confusing at first because there are just so many different types of witches. But the main draw about this book that I loved so much is the friendship between the two main characters. I just think it's amazing to have that depicted in YA fantasy. We don't really have a lot of that, and it was just like so good. I ended up giving Truth Witch 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read is Red Queen by Victoria Avr. I was expecting not to like this book because I had just heard so many negative things about it, and that's why I hesitated like forever to read it. The sequel's coming out in February, so I was like, I should read it now and figure out if I really want to read the next one. So that's what I did, and I ended up really enjoying it. The main character, her name is Mare Barrow, and she lives in a society where there are silver bloods and red bloods. Silver bloods are basically like X-Men kind of, like they all have some kind of unique ability, and Mare is a red blood, so she's kind of like in an oppressed class and her family is poor. She one day discovers that she actually has powers that a silver might have, so it's like this whole anomaly and they're trying to figure out how this is even possible. And I think Victoria Avr's writing is really beautiful. I think she is like awesome at storytelling. Like she really just was like on point with pacing and everything. I was amazed. The one thing that I will say is that I did feel like I was reading other books while I was reading it, and I'm sure that's why other people didn't like it as much. I felt like it was a combination of The Selection and The Hunger Games, but it was like different enough and good enough that I am excited to read the second one. I'm definitely going to be continuing with the series, and I just think it was really well written and I think it was a great story. So I am glad that I fell on the side of people that liked it instead of hated it. And I gave Red Queen 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read this month is one that I was highly anticipating for 2016, and it actually doesn't come out until May, and it's Summer of Sloane by Erin L. Schneider. My friend Andy, who's a book blogger at Andy's ABCs, I will leave a link to her blog down below because it's awesome, but she went to ALA midwinter and she was kind enough to send me her arc of this so that I could read it and borrow it before it comes out because she knew how much I really wanted to. So I'm so thankful that she did that because I really ended up loving this book. I wanted to read this so badly because it sounds a lot like Forgetting Sarah Marshall. And the main character of the book is named Sloane, and she has a twin brother named Penn, and their parents are divorced. And over the first to the second page, you find out that Sloane's best friend is pregnant with Sloane's boyfriend Tyler's baby, and her and Tyler have been dating for a year, and obviously her boyfriend and her best friend went behind her back, and that's like just devastating because she doesn't even have someone that she can really confide in anymore about what happened. She lost her best friend and her boyfriend like all in one shot. And it just so happens that she's leaving the next day to go to Hawaii. She does that. She's going to visit her mom with her twin brother. So it's like good in some ways because she's able to just separate herself and like take some distance from the situation. But she quickly learns that, you know, despite being further away, it doesn't mean that the problems are gone. She's just struggling to try to like move on with her life and try to do something for herself and try to understand why it is that this happened and why these two people who are closest to her would do something like this to her. And I just thought like Sloane's character was extremely mature. The way that she handled the situation was really like inspiring because, you know, this is obviously like a terrible thing to happen to someone, but she was still in good spirits for the most part. She was still trying to go out, trying to see people. Like she wasn't ever just hiding alone in her room or anything. And she just really had a very mature viewpoint and a very mature way of going about like analyzing everything that happened. Obviously, one of the best things about this book was being able to read all about the settings in Hawaii, and there is a new love interest that she meets there, and his name is Finn, and he is just super adorable, and I really like them together. And I feel like there is a little bit of predictability within this book, but it was still really, really good, really enjoyable. I would definitely recommend it. I gave Summer of Sloane 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read is Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertelli, and I completely fell in love with this book. The main character is like so real and so amazing. I just like completely love his narrative, and the way that he thinks and just being inside of his head is amazing. Like he is like super like obsessive, but like really thoughtful, and he just has those thoughts that everyone has, and I just felt like he was so relatable. Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda is an LGBTQ plus friendly novel. It's about our main character named Simon, who is a high school boy who is gay, but he hasn't come out yet, and he's been emailing secretly with this other person at his school named Blue, but he doesn't know Blue's identity, and the two of them are both gay, and they are just confiding in each other of all the things that they're going through, all their feelings, and it's just so amazing to like see their relationship develop over the internet. Oh, I just love it. And Simon loves Oreos, and Oreos are amazing, but there are so many like geeky references in this book that it was really enjoyable for me. Like for instance, like one of the characters dressed up like a Fruits Basket character, which is a super cute anime. At one point they were talking about Doctor Who. There's a lot of mention of like superheroes. And also very notable is Simon's family, who I just love. Like they are hilarious, and I love his parents. They really want to be like the cool parents, but they still like really care about the kids and try to make like the right decisions for them. So I thought that that was really, really cute, really sweet. I am definitely planning on rereading this at some point because I just love it. And if you haven't read it, I think that you should, because I honestly feel like this is a book that everybody would like, no matter like what your taste is in books. I ended up giving Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read is Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. This is the first book in the Infernal Devices series, and I ended up really loving it a lot more than I enjoyed The Mortal Instruments, so that was a plus. It is more of like a Victorian London type story, and it follows our main character Tessa, who finds out that she has this ability to shapeshift into other people, but like she doesn't just turn into them, she kind of becomes them, so she has their memories and everything. And there is like this whole elaborate plot of people obviously wanting to use her, so she ends up kind of getting involved with the Shadowhunters and staying at their institute, and there's this whole big mystery that goes along with it, and I'm sure that you probably know what it's about because I feel like everyone has read this except for me. But anyway, overall, I really liked it. I didn't like Will as a character as much as everyone else seems to. Maybe he changes a little bit over the series. Like I can see the little things about him that are appealing, but right now he's still kind of a jerk in my opinion. So I don't know, we'll see about that. I ended up really liking this. I thought that the world building is really good, but I'm wondering if I also like, since I had like the previous knowledge of the Mortal Instruments series, if that's why I was also able to like jump into the world so easily. I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I read this month is Fablehaven by Brendan Mull. This is a middle grade series, and I also really liked this one, so as you can see I had a pretty great reading month, which is exciting. That's probably why I was able to read 10 books. But it follows, our two main characters are these two kids who go to stay with their grandfather. Their parents are the ones that like drop them off there, and there are all these rules that they have to follow, but obviously being kids who are curious, they break all those rules, and they find out that their grandfather is actually living, he's like preserving this whole magical world in his backyard, which is called Fablehaven, and there are fairies and witches, and there's like a big Midsummer's Eve thing that happens, and it's just really fun. It's funny because obviously every time the grandfather tells them like, don't do this, they're like, we wouldn't do that, and then they do it. Especially Seth, who is the younger brother, he just like breaks every rule in the book. In order to be able to see this world, they end up drinking this milk, which opens their eyes to everything, and they have to drink a little bit of it every day in order to see like what's actually going on. And it's really, really fun because you can see like the grandfather's probably thinking about leaving this place to them when he passes. So it's really just interesting to see them interact with this world, and I thought like the world building in it was really fantastic. This is a series. I want to say that there are like 6 books in total, and I'm definitely going to be continuing on with it at some point. I ended up giving Fablehaven 4 out of 5 stars. So those are all the books that I read in January. There were 10 in total, and a lot of them applied to my reading challenges, which is great. And I hope that I have another great reading month in February. So why don't you guys tell me what your favorite book that you read this month is? And I will see you guys soon with my TBR video. Bye!